Oh,
Nice to see you too. I love your glasses. Those are
thank
so
you.
adorable.
Thanks, love. And you're wearing pink. We're vibing with our pink.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. How are you?
Good. Sorry, my dog got groomed today, so I had to pick her up and get back home.
Oh, no,
So sorry I'm a few minutes late.
it's okay. I completely understand. I appreciate you being able to change the time. So thank you.
Sure.
So I know a little bit about you. You shared, but I want to know more.
Yeah,
And I really think my audience would love to know more about you and some of the things that you have experienced.
thanks. Yeah, it's a area that a lot of people don't talk about because there's a lot of shame in being a female and not being able to have children and a lot of disconnection because you feel like you're the only one who couldn't figure out how to birth a baby or create a baby.
Yeah.
So I find it to be very liberating to be at a point in my journey that I can talk about it. So I anytime I can, I try to do it because I know that there's a woman sitting out there who just is missing that portion of her life.
Yeah. I love that you are in a place where you can talk about it and you can, share it and be that inspiration that others are probably looking for. So, um, congratulations for making it to that
Thank you.
spot and being, a healthy person in that area. I'm sure that was not easy.
No.
Um,
It was a journey, and that's why I decided to become a certified life coach for women without kids because there were zero resources offered to me when I realized that my dream of motherhood wasn't possible.
oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So how did that unfold for you? I'm sure you did like treatments and things like that. Like how was that experience and what happened?
Well, I got married at 35. So honestly, I always was regular in my cycles. I never had any indication that I'd have trouble getting married. Or sorry, I never thought that I'd have trouble getting pregnant. But when I finally started trying, I was 35. And for 2 years, we did all the timed intercourse, all the things that, you're supposed to get pregnant naturally by. And at 37, I finally went and got a workup done and was diagnosed with a condition called unexplained infertility, which meant that there was no explanation for why I was infertile. So imagine that, like a doctor
Right.
telling you that, and you're kind of like, I'm unexplainable. So
That had to
from
make the
there
process
is,
a lot harder.
yeah, because you feel like already you're this odd person who can't get pregnant, and then you get this diagnosis that classifies you as unexplained. So from there, I started fertility treatments, and if you if you don't know what that entails, a lot of it is heavy medications, things that are supposed to hyperstimulate your egg production and getting follicles to produce so that there's a higher chance that one of them will fertilize throughout your cycle. And through that 7 years, it wasn't back and forth. It was back and forth. It wasn't like month after month for 7 years. There was a lot of moments of pause where I was like, can I do this anymore? Because your body is just full with hormones. You're giving yourself injections. So basically every day my husband would give me shots at different times of the day, just a lot of putting my life on hold because I didn't want to commit to a cruise with my family because I was like, well, I could be pregnant. I could be in the midst of a cycle. So there was a lot of 7 years of feeling like I just didn't have control of my life. Everything was geared towards trying to have a baby. And then I was in a career where I avoided getting, going for promotions, potentially getting promoted because I didn't want to then be promoted and then figure out that I was going on maternity leave. So there was just a lot of pauses in my life. And when I left that 7th year of going through treatments, my doctor, thank goodness, was very honest with me and just advised that I don't continue on because I was at that time, I was in my 40s. And he said, it's pretty, we can pretty much tell that if you continue on, your results aren't going to change. So you certainly can. But from a clinical advice standpoint, I don't think that you should, but we can offer you adoption agencies or opportunities for adoption, or there's another opportunity to get a donor for your egg. And then my husband, we could have used, his sperm and then fertilized an egg from a donor. But, after a lot of consideration, we just decided that neither of those options were the right ones for us. And then I never heard back from my doctor or the office ever again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, taking hormones, I mean, for 7 years, I'm sure that did something to your body, right? Like, I'm sure, like, it was, physically, mentally, emotionally, like, I'm sure that, sometimes it's probably like, is this my reality or is this just the hormones? Like, how I know that had to take a toll on your marriage, right?
Yes, it did. And a lot of, self-judgment for me, like feeling like I wish my husband had found somebody else that could have given him a child. A lot of connection, physically that seemed like it was only timed around trying to have a child. So we lost this portion of our intimacy because it was kind of like, intercourse was not something that was fun anymore. It was something that was like, okay, you got to get this going, and this is to result in something. But also like my physical appearance, with all the hormones, I gained maybe probably about 25-30 pounds, and I wasn't fitting in my clothes, and it was a really hard time to navigate. And I felt like there was nobody else I knew that had been in that position who wasn't able to get pregnant. Most of the women that I knew who had gone through fertility treatments, they had their dream child. And so then I felt like, gosh, I really have no one to talk to. And luckily, the pandemic for me is what finally slowed my life down, where I wasn't a workaholic. I wasn't escaping my life by just, working more and being like the employee who would respond to emails at 11 p.m. because I had nothing else going on really in my life. And I felt like the only place I felt like I was really successful and that I was able to achieve my goals was in my workplace. So when the pandemic came around, I was in the type of, I worked in the medical field myself, and finally things slowed down because surgeries weren't taking place. The hospitals were, focusing on the COVID patients. And I finally had a moment to look at my life and assess, like, I'm missing out on who I am. I was just feeling like I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I started working with a weight loss coach who turned out to be a life coach. And I had no clue what life coaching was at that point. And it truly changed my life. And that's when I decided, I was like, okay, this is what I can do with my story. I can be the person that figures out how to help other people. And so I enrolled in a year-long life coaching certification. And in 2021, I became a certified life coach. And since then, I've really been devoting my time and my resources to helping other women who are trying to thrive and feel fulfilled, even though they couldn't have the children that they dreamed of.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, that's incredible. And to be in that space and go and get an education and be healthy enough after doing that for 7 years.
Mhm.
That is powerful because not a lot of people can do that, right? And like you said, most of the people out there, when they go through the treatments, they do have a child at some point.
Mhm.
Um, have you ever been able to connect with someone who has the unexplainable fertility and
Yeah,
not
unexplained infertility. I have when I started a Instagram page when I was going through life coaching school just to see if there was anyone else out there. And it's amazing. I have over 4,000 followers, people who, all honestly, like all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, like people who have reached out and been like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found you, because I didn't know that there was anyone else who was going through what I'm going through. And some have the unexplained infertility diagnosis. Some have PCOS. Maybe they have endometriosis, other indications or other diagnoses that are commonly indications for infertility. But yeah, there's just a special group of women who we just feel like you can finally meet somebody else and going from feeling unexplained to like, oh my gosh, like maybe there are other people I can explain myself to and they understand.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that you had the power to do it, right? Like I love that you realized there was something missing out there, and
Mhm.
instead of seeking other things to help with that, you decided to be powerful and to use that. And so that is just amazing. So
Thanks.
how was it when you shared the first time? Like how was that feeling, and how hard was that, or was it not too hard because you knew that was something you wanted to do?
Well, I knew that I wanted to do it, but I also had kept my infertility a secret for a long time. There's so much shame that came along with it, and obviously really painful to open up about something like that to people that aren't like in your inner circle. And I say that even thinking like my parents, a lot of the stuff that I was going through, I didn't even share with them because it was really hard for me to talk about. So when I got to a point in my journey where I realized I didn't do anything wrong and my body hadn't failed me, it just, there was something else meant for me in my life besides children. And being able to open up and talk about it took me a little bit of warming up to, but when you have people reaching out to you and saying the things like I shared before about feeling finally connected or seen for the first time, it just made me want to figure out more ways to connect and reach people. So that's why I'm so appreciative of you giving me this opportunity to be on your podcast, because I'm sure that there's, even if it's just one person, or maybe somebody has someone, a sister or a friend that they know is going through this, and to be able to create that connection just feels so like, I can't tell you, like the ability to connect with people just makes my life feel like all the suffering I went through was worth it to be able to come out on the other end of this feeling the way that I do.
Um, talking with you, and just feeling how passionate you are about this is just so touching. Um, it gave me cold chills just hearing you just now talk about how it was, the judgment, and then just wanting to just be that person for others, right? Like
Mhm.
that's not an easy thing to do. And not only that, but when you decide to share your journey and you haven't been open about it, then that leads to questions from other people, right? Like that opens the door to have people come and have that conversation and say things, or however they want to process it. And so how did you juggle that? Because I'm sure once you shared, there was a ton of questions or people asking like, why didn't you tell me? Or,
Mhm.
so um how did you respond to that?
Well, I think, first of all, the power of having a life coach and, understanding that the story that I believe about myself doesn't have to be one of a diminishing kind of view of myself. So knowing that even though I don't have what a lot of other women have, or what, depending on where, if you study the Bible or whatever it is, where we, are raised to believe that that is our purpose as women, is, to help reproduce. There's such power in realizing that you can believe a different story about your life. And for me, I always lead from a place of love. And if somebody says something that the old version of me, right, the person before I had the skill, would feel very violated and attacked by, I try to lead with love for them and be like, maybe I'm the only person that they know who's ever been through this. So they don't have an education to understand this. Or maybe I could be the first person that gives them an alternate way of looking at someone with kids. Because, that's one thing a lot of people assume, that because I couldn't have a child, that I should have adopted. And that if, I really wanted a kid bad enough, I would have pursued other avenues. But what they don't realize is that I'm grieving my dream of motherhood, and had I chosen to adopt, and that's the right option for a lot of people. But for my husband and I, we went into the fertility treatment journey being like, okay, we both have to be on the same page with things. And we made that agreement to each other. And if we weren't 100% aligned on something, then we just, it was not harboring negative energy towards one another. It was just like, okay, like we're at different places on this. We're not going to do that. And the egg donor thing, my husband was not game for, and the adoption thing, I was not game for. So that was our agreement. And that was part of our, marriage and respect that we had for each other. So I try to lead with, I could maybe be the first person that they meet and learn something from me and maybe change the life of somebody else. And so I created something that a lot of women who are infertile or don't have children have found valuable, but I think other people value too. It's this guide called the top 27 things people say when you're childless, because there is just this assumed like, oh, pray on it. God delivers things in magical ways, or people tell you relax and it'll happen. And they don't realize that those words they may think are comforting to say to you, but as the receiver of those words, it's more like a slap in the face, because you're kind of like, did you not think I thought about these things? Or did you not think I prayed enough? Or so just kind of creating awareness that there is not, you don't always have to say something, right? That you can learn that this is an option to adopt, not to adopt, to remain childless, and not have to assure someone that, there's still more that they need to do in order to create a fulfilling life.
Yeah. And so you saying that is interesting for me, because I would have been, my response would have been, I'm sorry, and I'll be praying for you and your family. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that would have been my response. So not realizing that that would have been maybe a hurtful response because of the way what you guys have went through, and taking it as, well, you think we haven't done, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
would never have connected that. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only one listening that would have, you know, connected that either. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And then people might say, well, then what do I say? Because you don't just have someone, drop that zinger on you and just look at them and walk away. So maybe something like, I really appreciate you choosing to share that with me. I'm sure, that must have been a really hard time for you. Or like acknowledging without having to try to fix somebody is a beautiful way of showing your support as a friend or a family member of just, I appreciate that you're choosing to share this with me today.
um, so you have an Instagram page,
Yeah.
which is, what is it?
It's Lana.Manikowski, my last name. And the same
Okay.
thing, my YouTube is the same. I try to keep it consistent because my last name's hard to spell. So
Yes. Can you spell that, please?
yeah, it's Lana, Lana, and then dot, and then M like Mary, Anikowski.
And you had a book. You mentioned the book.
Yeah, well, I'm in the process. My book will be out early next spring. It's called So Now What? And that's the same. I have a podcast called the So Now What podcast. And it's all about rediscovering life after IVF fails for you. And yeah, so the book will be out early in the spring in anticipation of an event I started called the Others Day Brunch, which happens the day before Mother's Day. And it's for women who are not children. I'm sorry, it's for women who don't have children, or maybe they no longer have a mom in their lives. So it's a live event brunch that I do in Chicago. And it's always the day before Mother's Day. It's going to be my 4th annual. So the book is going to be kind of like the precursor to this year's Others Day brunch.
Oh, I love it. So I'm guessing on your Instagram page and things like that, people would be able to find out about that event, or is there
Yeah.
another place for them to go?
Yeah. No, Instagram is probably the best or on my website, lanamanikowski.com. There's a little tab for Others Day, so you can learn all about the brunch. And this year is May 10th of 2025 is going to be this year's brunch. So yeah, I got lots of big things going on here for women who are childless after infertility.
I love that. And yeah, that's great. And I know some people who have went through um the IVF system and try to, get pregnant, but they did end up having, thankfully. So yeah, I applaud you.
Thank you.
I'm sure it was not easy and not easy to share. So
Yeah.
being that
Well,
person for others is amazing. So thank you for
thank
doing that.
you. Thank you. Yeah, like I said, it's just the more people that hear the story, I think, it just maybe makes it be less stigmatized. And then I also think about the young girl out there who doesn't know that she's not going to become a mom. And the more examples she sees in her life might help her to deal with it if she gets to this point in her life too.
Yes, that is a good way of looking at that too. Some people, just think about those who have went through it and not those who might be going through it later. So that's good that you also speak for that audience as well. Um, do you have anything that you would like to say to the audience before the show ends, or do you have some other encouraging words?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people don't know where to go when this is over. So what I've done is I started a 12-week coaching program for women who are childless after infertility. It's called Thrive After Infertility. So if there is somebody who's feeling like they want to reconnect with their life, kind of stop looking at their body in a way that they feel like it failed them, figure out how you're going to fill the next 40 years of your life if you don't have the milestones of being a mom to automatically fill your time. I have created this awesome program called Thrive After Infertility. So there's more information about it on my Instagram and on my website. And my next class starts in 2 weeks. So if somebody is listening, I know this is going to be airing soon. My fall class is going to start. And the great thing about my fall class is it helps women who are struggling around Halloween, because, that's a very hard time for women without kids when they see the cute costumes and the families trick or treating. Thanksgiving, when you might run into Aunt Sally, who you haven't seen in a while, and she's asking if there's any baby news. Or, of course, Christmas, whether you celebrate Christmas or not, Christmas is a time when there's a lot of family tradition and kid centric. So, my fall class helps to support women who are wanting not only to create this life where they're thriving, but also get that little bonus of the holiday support. So, you can find more information on that at lanamanikowski.com/thrive. So,
That
yeah.
is, you are doing lots of stuff for sure.
Yes.
Yes, you are. So, you had mentioned about people around the holidays asking about baby news.
Mhm.
How did you deal with that question once you guys realized that we're not going to try anymore?
Yeah. So that's one of the things I cover in that guide. I was telling you the top 27 things people say when you're childless and how to respond. So that's free if anyone wants to download it. I'm sure you'll put the link in the show
Yeah.
notes. But just being like, oh, that actually isn't going to be part of our journey, or, thanks so much for being interested, but we tried and parenthood isn't going to be part of our journey. So I just think, depending on how you're feeling in the relationship with that person, oftentimes it's, the people who haven't seen you in a long time and they just assume, right? And just being like frank with them and telling them like what they need to know, that sort of squelches the questions, because there's not continuous, probing, if you will, if you just give them an ambiguous question. So I was just somebody who was like, all right, I'm just going to go in here with the zinger. And if they feel uncomfortable, they can feel uncomfortable, but it's better they feel uncomfortable than I do, because it's my story to tell.
Yes, exactly. What about your husband? How does he deal with this reality now, and how does he approach it?
Yeah, we have very different ways of dealing with this. So He is not very open and talkative about it. During Father's Day, we usually, I'll be like, hey, what do you want to do today? So I'll kind of put him in the driver's seat of how he wants to be recognized and what he wants to do. But I do see, sometimes it makes me sad when he calls his buddies and they all have kids and no one's free on a Friday night and he's looking for someone to watch a game with and everyone's busy. So I really try to just be there for him and be like, hey, if I hear him in another room on a call, I'll like text him and be like, hey, you want to go out to dinner tonight? Or just be there for him, because I don't like to make the generalization that that's just the way guys are. Like, not all guys are that way, but he's somebody who's just been very quiet and hasn't processed outwardly a lot of the things that he's going through. So I sometimes throw him the hook, and if he wants to grab on and be part of something that I suggest, then that's cool. But he probably wouldn't be someone who would come to me and be like, hey, I'm feeling really down about this.
So he's very much just the private, I will process and deal with this on my own type of thing, and not more of, hey, you want to talk about this, or hey,
Yes.
this, yeah. So that's probably might be a little difficult sometimes, because you seem to be one that wants to talk and wants to like share how
Yeah.
you're feeling and relate to others, where your husband is more reserved and like, I don't, we'll
Yeah.
just not
But
talk.
he'll be the first one that'll tell people about my podcast or tell people about, my wife was on the news, because I've been on the national news a couple times about my Other's Day brunch, and he'll be like my champion, but it's always putting me in the forefront. And maybe that's his way of sharing our story because he doesn't have the words to do it. So that's cool.
I love that. That is so
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. It is very
Oh,
nice.
yes, that is so sweet. I have really enjoyed talking with you. It has been so fun, and I have learned some things from talking with you. So thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
and all of your links, all everything that you have shared will definitely be in the information link on the podcast. So everyone will be welcome to go there if they weren't able to jot down the information while we're talking.
Yeah.
Um, but do you have anything else that maybe I might have missed with your show and your book that you want to share?
Yeah. I think just knowing that it might not be talked about a lot, but 1 in 4 women are struggling with infertility, and not all of those women are going to end up becoming moms. And just having a non-judgmental view of people that have a life that looks different from yours is probably the most love that you can give to somebody who's struggling.
Yes, which leads me to a question I do have. I With everyone that I talk to, right, I always hear a lot of different takes on normal, right? Because that's not normal, or what they did was not normal. And I really try to bring that in with, well, what is normal, right? Like, what is normal for you may not be normal for somebody else. So instead of thinking that that is just normal straight across the board, and being judgy about it, let's just step back and see where they're coming from and see why they're responding or acting that way. And maybe that's just what they know. Maybe that's all, what they are used to. So that would be room for a conversation, like to figure out where everybody's on the same page there. Did you come across that at all within your journey of normal or what's not
Yeah.
normal?
Well, just even like the question when you meet someone, be like, "Oh, so how many kids do you have?" And
Okay.
it's like right off the bat, somebody assumes that everyone has kids,
Yeah.
and feeling like, gosh, like be aware that not everyone's life is cookie cutter. And I totally love that you offer that on your platform, and we need more of that because there's so much more openness that I feel like even I've had through my journey, where before my infertility, like I wouldn't have known any of this stuff. And I feel like not just, people who are infertile, but people whose lives look different than I do, or have, religious beliefs, or, desires different than I do. I just feel like I'm so much more open to not feeling judgmental about that, and just letting them like be who they are. And it's so much easier as a person to exist that way.
It is, yes. And that's what I try to share, like, just give it a try, right? Just be more open-minded and realize that, what you grew up knowing, or what you might have done in your daily life, or, what you may have thought meant something might mean something to somebody else. So,
Mhm.
I mean, the little things like where I'm from, when you go into the grocery store, like, where's a buggy, right? Like a buggy. But I have realized that even just that word means different somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it's just little things like that that I share with people to help them try to understand that it's not,
Or pop and soda,
yes, pop and soda, right? Like,
sneakers or tennis shoes.
yes, right? Like, everyone is going to look at things and have a different word for it, maybe, and it may not mean the same somewhere else. So, yes, that is, yeah, I just want people to be more open minded and less judgmental when it comes to everyone's situation. So, again, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Really, I truly appreciate it, and I really have loved talking with you.
Mm. Same
Um,
here.
but that is the end of the show for today. So thank you all for being here and listening, and we will be chatting soon. Bye.